Let's spend a few minutes and walk through this week's lab assignment. So if you could load up your Blackboard page and let's go to this week's content. So under course content on the left-hand side, week 1, setup and introduction to Python. If we go down to our labs, our graded assignments, we will see an entry all the way down for the week 1 lab. Now in the week 1 lab, I've included a GitHub Classroom assignment link. So you'll want to take that link and use it to accept this week's assignment. And there's another video you should have watched earlier. It's in the videos link or videos folder in this week's course content on how to sign up for GitHub, apply your GitHub account to the first assignment and how to accept assignments, and then how to pull down code. So follow that video, pull down the code for this week, and on Blackboard is a copy of the README file in that code, which explains the steps you'll want to take for doing this week's lab. So I'm not going to go and reread this. Let's actually pull up the code and talk about it for a few minutes and talk about the goals for the assignment. So I'm going to assume here that you've already accepted the assignment and you've pulled down the code per the other video. And I have loaded this up already in Visual Studio Code. So I have 3 files here because I'm going to show you a little bit of the solution as well. And I'm going to do that every week. I want to make sure that, yes, there'll be challenges in the code, but what you're doing follows a template and I want to make sure that you're on the right track in each assignment. So we have the README file, which I showed you in the previous video on how to set up the labs on your machine. Just remember in the README file, you're going to want to check this in too. Make sure that you change your name. So put your name in there and put your S number in there so I know who you are and I can attach your GitHub account to the Blackboard grades. So that's the only change you need to make in the README file. And then once you've done that, go to hello.py, and this will be the template file I created that you're going to write some Python in. So there's a number of parts. So part 1, we're going to take two variables and do some operations on them. We're going to add, subtract, multiply, divide. Just a reminder before we get started as well, at the top of each week, there's comments that say author. Make sure to put your name in there. Again, it's just so it's easier for me to understand who uploaded the assignment and to grade it. So there's a lot of comments to help guide you. So part 1, I said we're going to create some variables and use expressions. And I'm going to get this started for you. So the first part of part 1 is create 2 variables. Make one equal to 42 and one to 24. So I already created a first variable for you, spam, and set it equal to 42. And then we'll create another one, eggs, equals 24. And I've done the first part of the assignment for you. So we have 2 variables. We set them to 2 values, 42 and 24. The Python interpreter sees those, says they're integers. You've now created integer variables. And I'll do the first part of part 1 as well. So add the 2 variables and display it to the user. So let's create a new variable, dinner, and set it equal to spam plus eggs. So we've created a new variable and we're going to set its initialized value to the value of variable spam plus the value of variable eggs. So we've created an expression with 2 variables and an operator of addition. And then we want to display this to the user. So we'll print maybe a new line here that says part 1, add 2 variables, and then we'll print the solution. To the screen. So what you'll see now when we run this application is I have created a new variable, added spam and eggs, set it those values to that variable and then printed it to the screen with a little bit of notification that, hey, this is part one and we're adding two variables. So you're going to want to do the same thing for subtraction, multiplication, and division in part one. Part two, there's going to be a little bit of a trick. So I started some code in here because I wanted you to experience an error and see if you can recover from it. So we have here starter code spam equals input, please enter a number for a variable 1. So we can change this to please enter a number for spam. But if you run this, you're going to get an error if you try to follow the instructions on line 38 here, add the two variables and display it to the user. So let's walk you through the process. Maybe I'll give you another answer right now as well. So we have spam, and we're going to input a number for spam, and eggs equals input please enter a number for eggs. So what we've done using the input method in Python is ask the user for a value, and you're going to input that value in the command line when you run the application. And then you want to add the two variables together. So maybe here under add the two variables, I put part 2, add two variables. I set dinner equal to spam plus eggs, and then I print dinner. So let's go ahead and save this file, and we're going to run it. So I'm going to open up a command prompt here, and when you'll want to constantly be testing your code file as you make changes to it to see if there's any errors. If we run Python hello.py and hit enter, part 1, we can see we added two variables together. So 42 and 24 equals 66. So dinner equals spam plus eggs. Dinner takes the value of those two variables added together to get 66. Now let's try to do the same thing. Let's set the same values for spam and eggs. This is a good way to test your application. So as you build your lab, if you want to use the same inputs, it will let you know if you're doing the work correctly. So let's enter 42 for spam and 24 for eggs. Now before I hit enter, your assumption should be, well, I had a line of code that says dinner equals spam plus eggs. It should add these together. Now if you remember from the idle video, there's type issues you have to be aware of in Python. So again, we've entered these values, but now we see that it's 42 and 24. So go back to that lesson if you don't remember how to handle typecasting in Python, but you have entered what Python considers are strings, and you need to convert those strings to integers before you operate on them. So you'll want to go back, but we'll go and show you real quick. Let me cancel out of this app. If you ever want to cancel out of an application in Python that you're running in the command prompt, you can hit Control-C, and it'll show you a keyboard interrupt exception. It means that Python noticed that you canceled out and you're leaving. So we'll minimize our command window, and let's go ahead and convert these two inputs to integers. So we have spam equals input, and input says, okay, show me the string, please enter a number for spam. And then it receives input from the end user, same thing with eggs. What we'll want to do is cast these values, and I'll show you a simple way in a second to streamline your code, as integers instead of strings. So spam equals int spam, eggs equals int eggs. So what we're saying here is we want spam and eggs to be integers. We know they're strings already. We're going to convert them to integers and save them back into the variable. Let me save this file and we will run the same command again. If you ever want to clear your screen in the command prompt, CLS will do it. And we'll run hello.py again. And now if we type in 42 and 24, we get 66. So instead of 4224, which is string concatenation, which will work in part 3, we've converted them to integers, and now Python knows when you're adding two things, treat them as numbers and not strings. So I'm going to exit again, Control C, clear my screen. One other point, when you're doing type conversions like this, if you're taking it from input, you don't have to add these two lines, spam and eggs, and then convert it right there. You can actually combine multiple methods into one. So we will put the integer conversion right on the input. And I'll explain this in a second. We can get rid of these two lines here. So what we're doing is we're accepting input from the user, and it's going to come back a string, but before we save it into the variable, we're going to convert these to an integer using the int type conversion method. So instead of having 4 lines, it saves you, and you can go down to 2. So that's essentially part 2. And again, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And if you're using those same numbers as test inputs, you should see the same exact results in part 2 as you did in part 1 if you're running 42 and 24. So it's a good way to test your code. And in part 3, I'm not going to show you how to do this one, but if you go back to the initial videos on idle and Python expressions, we're doing the same thing, but we're going to keep them as strings this time. And we're going to join the two strings. So you're going to use the addition operator, which is string concatenation. And then you're going to use the multiplication operator, which is string repetition. So in join the two strings together, use a plus sign, and then you can multiply strings to repeat them in the last two parts of part 3. So once you're done with the code, I've actually completed the assignment, so I will run it for you so you can see what it should look like. So hello done.py. Oh, I'm sorry, and you'll probably run into this too. Always put Python in front of it so that the Python interpreter will pick up this code file and run it. So Python hello done.py. And you see my first part, you should be seeing these results. So 66, 18, 1008, and 1.75. And now for part 2, we're going to add a number for spam. So let's just do the same numbers. 42 for eggs, 24. And we see these same numbers. And then finally for part 3, which I didn't show you the result of, let's just call spam spam. And we'll call eggs eggs. And hit enter. And for the 3 portions of part 2, you should see the 2 strings concatenated together in the first portion, the first string repeated 3 times in the second portion, and then in the last portion, the second variable repeated 3 times. Now I've called my variable spam and eggs. You can call them whatever you want if you want to have some fun with it. I don't mind. But again, the whole point of this assignment is just to get you familiar with running code, get you familiar with Git. It should be super simple, but if you have any questions, please email me. I know that there's a lot of steps this week. In the future weeks, it's really just going to be the labs, the quizzes, the discussion boards, because you'll have your machine set up, you'll be used to the course, it'll take a lot less time to prep. So this week, most of your time should be spent on prep, but again, feel free to ask me. Also, ask your classmates in the discussion board. We should be working together on these assignments. It makes life a little easier, and it kind of shows everyone the answer if you're willing to share. So the discussion board course questions is a good place to get assistance from others and to post your questions. We're all learning this together. We're all working together. Next week, I know this week as well, we didn't talk anything cybersecurity, but next week we'll begin our first cybersecurity portion of the class. So each week, again, we're going to have a Python topic, And then with each Python topic, we're going to relate it back to a topic in cybersecurity. So I know the material this week might be a little dry, but let's get you going so we can get into more exciting stuff. Remember when you're done to upload this to GitHub. You can commit that and push that using the instructions in the previous video. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.